Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. And over the years, we've walked the journey with you in your scholarship applications. I put out a number of videos on scholarship opportunities and clear step-by-step guidance. And guess what? A number of you have gone ahead to get the scholarships. Like, look at all these people who have been able to get the scholarships. And many of you have actually been able to review your essays, and we've received so much good news. If you're applying for Chevening scholarship this season, well, by now you should have noticed that the questions are different from the questions that have been asked in the previous years. And there's not really so much content about it, but if you're in that boat, don't worry at all. Why? Because I've got you covered. I've looked at the new questions and answered them step by step and given guidance for every single question, giving step-by-step guidance. So if you're looking for the 2025 videos, well, in the description box below, just click and you'll find the videos. And the good news is that for every single video that you view, you will have a free review for the particular essay that you have viewed for. In the description box, hurry, click that link and get applying. For now, here is the leadership essay from last year that can still guide you on how to apply for this year's Chevening scholarship. We'll start off with a leadership essay and a few housekeeping rules. Remember that this is not a passive video, so get your pen and paper or typing device and follow along. And also feel free to pause at any one time so you can think through the discussion and ensure that you have a draft by the end of this video. So we'll use Aliko Dangote as an example. Who's Aliko Dangote? He's a Nigerian self-made business tycoon. He was named the first African billionaire in 2007. He's Africa's richest man and founder and chair of Dangote Group. We're going to use him to write our essays for today. So let's assume that Dangote is applying for an MSc in sustainability and business. Now we're going to break down the Chevening question into two. The first part is Chevening is looking for individuals who will be future leaders or influencers in their home countries. And they need us to explain how you meet this requirement using clear examples of your own leadership and influencing skills to support your answer. Word count is about 100 to 500 words, but I propose that you try to maximize and use almost all the 500 words or close to 500 and not 100. Step one, what is Chevening looking for? So if you go to their website, it says that Chevening is looking for individuals who will be future leaders or influencers in their home countries. So you need to excel in this area on your application form. So when I say application form, I mean the essays. Use recent examples to highlight your recent professional experiences that showcase your leadership skills. Demonstrate your influence by describing how you gained and maintained influence in the past roles, focusing on the outcomes rather than listing the responsibilities. Keep that in mind. And lastly, connect the dots. Link your leadership traits to your study plans and post-study goals. Next step, we need to break down the question. So the question can be answered in three parts. Part one, Chevening is looking for individuals who will be future leaders or influencers in their home country. First of all, leaders and influencers are problem solvers. And this means that you have to consider a problem in your field of work, community, or area of study that you'd like to help solve. And this can be derived from some of the challenges you've encountered in your line of work, which have inspired you to pursue further education. Then part two, you've got to explain how you meet this requirement using clear examples of your own leadership and influencing skills to support your answer. So you have to think of your personal experiences in solving the problem that you've identified as a leader and an influencer, and how you solve this society problem is what is going to be able to explain this. Then you have to think of and write down some specific examples. Part three is relate this to your program of study and your future goals. So what challenges did you encounter in your problem solving endeavors, and how will studying a master's better equip you to overcome the identified challenge? Now you've got to remember that this is how we are going to write out the full essay / examples. So in choosing an example example, I need you to have a theme at the back of your mind. A theme helps us to make sure that our examples are not everywhere, that you're not choosing. If you're, for example, going to study medicine, you're now not writing about hospitality or writing about IT or anything like that. So choosing a theme keeps us in line. So a theme helps you to keep your essay examples focused on one thing as opposed to being all over the place, like I mentioned. The theme you choose should align with your field of study. For Dangote, I selected the theme of economic growth to have that in mind. Now, writing the essay out, we start off with the introduction. Tips to consider for the introduction: 1, do not use quotes and definitions, and Chevening says this on their website as well. Identify a problem in your field and use it as a problem statement for your introduction. There are many ways of writing an introduction, but having it as a problem statement gives direction to what you write in your body. Use statistics and quantify this problem, and keep the introduction brief. 3 to 4 lines are enough. We are not writing an academic essay. This is not theoretical, so you want to quickly move from the introduction to the body. So keep the introduction as brief as possible. So let's look at an example of this, applying the principles that I've just shared. Again, remember, we're looking at Dangote applying for an MSc in sustainability and business, and this is what his introduction could look like. In 2012, the IMF reported that Nigeria was highly dependent on the oil sector, which contributed to over 90% of government revenue. However, the oil sector cannot sustainably employ a growing population of 213.4 million people, as it employs only 0.03% of the country's labor force. And I put a quotation. So in studying this particular problem, there are key things that a reader is going to be looking out for, especially as they go to the body. For example, if you talked about Nigeria being dependent on the oil sector, that means I want to be able to see in the body that you are contributing to Nigeria not being dependent on the oil sector. Also, it employs just only 0.03 people of the country's labor force. That means in the body, I would want to see how you're contributing to solving this particular problem. Your introduction is not just a random collection of words. Your introduction should keenly speak to your body. Whatever you put in your introduction, I want to be able to see that it speaks to the body, and I'll stress that a little bit more. Make sure that your introduction, whatever words you have put in your introduction, should correlate directly to the body. Again, if I put that Nigeria is dependent on the oil and gas sector, as a leader, then I want to see how you are working towards solving Nigeria's dependence on just the oil sector. I'll give another problem statement. Maybe if you're writing something on public health and say that there is little to no access of medical services, that means I need to see you in your body speaking about solutions that you've created towards providing medical services or bringing access to medical services in your community. So whatever you write in your introduction must correlate to in the solution that you're going to provide. That's what this example is doing. It's sort of setting the scene to the body. So let's go to the body. Tips to consider: share your leadership experience in 1 or 2 examples and expound on this. Actually, 2 to 3 examples. I know I'd written 1 to 2 examples here, but I mean 2 to 3 examples. 1 example is not enough. 1 example is not competitive enough. And this is one of the reasons why I'm making an updated video. Because in my previous video, I had put 1 example thinking that if you can be able to do more examples. But I see many of you just place 1 example, so do 2 to 3 examples. Use the STAR technique to articulate your leadership examples and influencing skills. This is very key. This is what brings out the actual leadership and influencing skills by using the STAR technique. Give more detail on the action taken and the result to highlight your leadership and influencing skills. Where possible, use specific numbers or quantities. Again, whereas I say where possible, please ensure that you are quantifying as much as you can to bring out the STAR technique. Relate your experience to your program of study and future plans. This is the other tip that we see on the Chevening website, so we need to make sure that we are sticking to that. So let's look at an example of this. We are coming from the problem statement that we had seen, where Dangote had said that the economy is largely relying on the oil and gas sector. Therefore, to start out the body, remember we said use the STAR technique. So the situation is largely the problem that we stated in our introduction. Now we go to the task at hand. The task at hand for Dangote is to diversify the economy and combat the problem of unemployment. Then the action taken is I spearheaded the development of the Dangote Group in 2013, which was designed to catalyze economic diversification. I I then identified and invested in the manufacturing sector, which is one of the key sectors with a high growth potential. I sold the vision to financiers, which influenced them to contribute 150 million in debt to support the development. I led a team of 8 to set up cement manufacturing plant in Kogi State with the hope of producing up to 5 million tons of cement. So again, our introduction covered what I would say is the situation. Then our task was just that one-liner to diversify the economy and combat the problem of unemployment. Then the action taken. In the action taken, this is where we need to see your leadership and influence. So in the action taken, we see Dangote being a leader and also influencing. In the action taken, again, I stress this is where largely we need to see your leadership and influence. Now, in the results, this is where we have you tying back this particular paragraph and ending it. With these efforts, the Dangote Group has successfully generated over 50,000 direct jobs with an additional 100,000 indirect jobs in related industries and supply chain. As a result, the manufacturing sector alone accounted for 15% reduction in the country's unemployment rate, fostering inclusive economic growth. This is in the result. But remember, the result needs to also correlate with the problem that you stated, and now the result shows how you have contributed to solving this problem. But like we said, your example also needs to further tie it to your academic plans and career goals. So in continuing building up this example, we state that one of the challenges I experience is expanding the manufacturing plan while ensuring conservation of the environment. This has motivated my desire to study a Master's of Science in Sustainability and Business, which will fill the knowledge gap on how best to expand existing manufacturing plants and set up new plants to facilitate continued economic growth while accounting for environmental conservation and protection. So this is how you relate your work experience to what you want to study. What your example has really built out is you saying that this is the problem, this is so far how I have contributed to the problem. However, given that there is a particular gap, I've had some challenges and there's a gap in my skill set. So I've not been able to do as much as I can, and therefore studying this particular course that you have identified is going to help me cover that particular gap that I have or that particular challenge. So that is what Chevening is looking out for a holistic example. That was the first example. So now let's look at a second example and we'll rush through this example. I know at the beginning I didn't stress the STAR technique, but let me take this opportunity to stress the STAR technique again. So the STAR technique is a situation, task, action taken, and the result. In creating an example, you need to apply this entire principle of situation, task, action taken, and the result. So in writing out your example, start by presenting the situation, which is the problem statement. In 2016, during Nigeria's recession and foreign exchange crisis, the country struggled with food insecurity as it imported over 90% of its food, spending billions of dollars annually. That is the situation. The task at hand. Recognizing the urgent need to reduce reliance on food imports. So the task at hand is to reduce reliance on food imports. Personally, to create a task, I sort of think about it like an objective. And you know, in writing an objective, you start with to do this, to something, starting with to. So you find in writing the task at hand, I use that particular word to. So task at hand is to reduce reliance on food imports, but of course, rejoiner words, you need to use rejoiner words like recognizing the urgent need to reduce reliance on food imports. Now we are going into the action taken. Remember, the action taken is what captures leadership and influence. So action taken is I led the Dangote Group expansion into agriculture, focusing on rice production. To secure government support, I advocated and influenced the development of favorable agricultural policies by demonstrating the long-term benefits of self-sufficiency. I also persuaded private investors to contribute 200 million by emphasizing the sector's potential for growth and profitability. Leading a team of 15, I oversaw the establishment of rice mills with a capacity of 1 million metric tons annually. Additionally, I personally engaged with local farmers using my influence to foster partnerships and establish outgrow schemes that empowered 50,000 smallholder farmers. Again, the action taken is where we see leadership and influence. So with this particular example, you can see both leadership and influence, and so ensure that you have leadership and influence as well in your action taken. So as a result, through this, remember, STAR is situation, situation, task, action taken. We've seen that. Now we've gone into R, which is the result. So through this, we not only created 30,000 direct jobs, but also reduced Nigeria's imports by 30% in 3 years, contributing to national food security and economic resilience. Now, this has to tie back to the task at hand and the situation. Your result ties back to the task at hand and the situation that you talked about. So it's not just random words put together. You have to think through exactly what you are writing. So we've seen the situation, the task, the action taken, and the result. But then Chevening has asked that we tie back our essay and sort of connect the dots, what we want to study and how that is connected to our work experience. So my efforts to develop favorable agricultural policies have brought to my attention the absence of proper waste management policies in agricultural sector, and so agricultural waste often goes unmanaged. Studying a Masters of Science in Sustainability and Business will equip me with the knowledge on the best practices to employ to advocate for better agricultural policies which factor in the importance of proper waste management for increased productivity. And so that's it, but I also wanted to show you what the full essay looks like. I know I've been breaking down the essay into particular parts, but I want to show you. So this screen shows you that all this is 481 words. Remember, we're asked to do this in 500 words. But see how short the introduction is. See how one paragraph is and the other paragraph. This is really to show you what your paragraph is going to look like in the end. And what I could have added is maybe a conclusion. If you still have space, like now I have 481 out of 500 words. If you can still write a concluding statement, you can include a concluding statement, and the concluding statement can be one attributed to maybe Chevening. But most importantly is to make sure that you've captured what the essay is looking for, and that is your influence and leadership. If you can add a concluding statement, please go ahead and add the concluding statement. Just make sure you don't go past 500 words. A good concluding statement is one that ties back to your introduction. Keep that in mind. So I'll leave us off with a quote from Dangote, and he states that in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. That's it for today. Remember, it might be hard, but nothing is ever impossible. See you in the next essay. Good luck.